Game designers have to keep in mind the tolerance of their player base. Card designers run the risk of making a combo that lasts for several minutes, or ones that gain an insane amount of advantage, or even worse yet, decks that don't just play on their turn, but on your turn. I'm looking at you, Tier Element, Flunder, and even Yummy, as I've come to learn. To prevent unintentional interactions, they need to keep in mind cards that limit the design of other cards. My name is Avery, and this is another look at Yu-Gi-Oh's card design, but from the perspective of how the ban list can shape card design and give insight as to what types of cards Konami is fine with and those they are not. Yes, that's a long title, but editing Avery can come up with that later. So be sure to smash the boo-boo stain off of that like and subscribe button as we are on the road to 2,000 subscribers. With all that out of the way, let's dive in. A card that has semi-flexible utility has a chance to limit card design. A card that mentions a certain factor like type, attribute, or level is a common example. Rhoda is one of the earliest cards that limited design since it acted as a toolbox for cards like DD Warrior Lady and Exiled Force, even if the latter cards were played at one copy. Having Rhoda unrestricted would mean essentially having 3 copies of every single warrior in the game. I actually vividly remember doing a video on this channel over a decade ago when Noble Knights, all they needed was like Rhoda at 3, and Rhoda moved from 1 to 3. And I remember saying in my ban list video, you now have 3 Rhoda, Noble Knight. There is no reason why you cannot do well. And they actually proceeded to be a decent rogue deck. The ban list, I would argue, is separate from the philosophy of card designers. If a card becomes banned, it's like saying this combination of cards is unacceptable. Or in some cases, this card limits future card design. In tandem with design limiting cards, limits can help the player base understand the philosophy of the ban list. For example, consider the card Machine Duplication. Machine Duplication limits the design of machine monsters with 500 attack or less. It has been used in combination with Spiral Quick Fix, but Machine Dupe has been a powerful card for longer than a decade. In 2007, the combination of Machine Duplication and Card Trooper was an oppressing combination of damage and card advantage, aptly named Troop Dupe Scoop. However, Card Trooper was limited shortly after, not Machine Duplication. The same happened with the limitation of Quick Fix. Machine Dupe is an example of an acceptable card design limitation. By restricting cards that abuse it, we can assume the ban list makers are fine with the limitations the card presents. You can still use it in Cyber Dragon or Deskbot decks to this day. Not all cards that limit card design are viable. Snake Rain is currently non-viable outside of some niche Mitsurugi builds that play the Oa-Dike, or as I call them, the O-Do-A-Dick builds, unless you're in love with Sinister Serpent or Overlay Eater. Snake Rain's viability is directly correlated with the effects of cards that it interacts with. If a card designer's goal is to make a reptile deck that can interact with Snake Rain in a healthy way, there are many pitfalls that they gotta avoid. The card must activate in the graveyard, but should avoid soft once per turn restrictions. Snake Rain is initially a -2, so the effect gain must help mitigate that. And effects such as when this card is sent to the graveyard, special summon 1 reptile monster from your deck would be too powerful. However, that same effect with the hard once per turn effect might be too slow. Design that adheres to design limits while still being effective requires innovation. Perhaps an effect that would make Snake Rain useful would be like until Noble Arms are needed once again. Quick effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon 1 reptile monster from your deck. You can only use the effect of X monster's name once per turn. This would provide speed to a theoretical future reptile deck to be useful on its own without Snake Rain and provide defense. Xyz monsters are a difficult mechanic to design around. Rank 4 toolboxes were once the dominant method of board solving, which is indicative of the problem it presents designers. Xyz monsters are accessible without being drawn with loose summoning restrictions. An extreme example of this type of restrictive design, I would argue, is Wind-Up Carrier Zenmighty. Zenmighty has 2 restrictive aspects to its design. Zenmighty gives access to any wind-up monster from the deck and can be summoned using any level 3 monsters. Comparing Zenmighty to Machine Duplication, you can't justify the restriction of every level 3 monster engine in the game. This presents 2 solutions, either restricting wind-up monsters or restricting Zenmighty. When a card presents this many absolutes, it may be a design concern. Link monsters are also a concern. They're more versatile than Xyz monsters, I would argue, often requiring only only 2 different named monsters. Similarly, cards like Thunder Dragon Colossus limited the design of every Thunder monster in a similar way to Nemesis Corridor. How a card game's designers and ban list makers treat limiting card design can help form predictions. Are the combo starter cards a problem, or is it the card that makes it broken? Another example is Magician Souls and Spiral Master Plan. Magician Souls may be vital to spellcaster-centric decks, but was also tremendously powerful and boosted Spiral in their prime. Are card designers okay with the limitation they have to consider when making future spellcaster cards? Is Konami R&D okay with this interaction? By observing past trends of similar cards, the player base can invest in their future decks confidently and hopefully have a decent idea of what cards will be hit. Of course, trying to guess what Konami will hit on a ban list is like trying to catch a falling sword. However, it does make me wonder if Konami hates the long history Yu-Gi-Oh has. By this, I mean that they hit the old cards that get abused instead of going for the real problems. Perfect example being branded Expulsion and Sanctifier Dragon. Obviously, the ban list is created to sell the new cards, we know this. But Konami needs to get to a middle ground point where they hit or limit some of the new cards and not hit so many of the old cards. Yes, Jowgen is a toxic card, but why ban Jowgen when Expulsion and Sanctifier were the problem? Currently, Sanctifier is still legal, but banning Expulsion almost seems pointless, especially with Jowgen and Gimmick Puppet Nightmare ban, and all the branded players just went to different cards and achieved essentially the same results. But I'm interested to see what you think. Please, leave a comment, tell me what you think about all this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.